My name is Samantha Mitchell, though everyone calls me Sam. I'm 28 years old and just spent the weekend at my parents' house for our first family reunion in years. Monday morning, I logged into my bank account to pay bills and froze. My savings, $47,000 meticulously saved for graduate school, was gone. Every penny. When I called my father in a panic, his response chilled me to the bone. "We needed it more than you did," he snorted dismissively. "Family comes first, Sam. Always has. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button." This is the story of how I learned what family really means, and it's not what I thought. I grew up in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, about 2 hours outside of Pittsburgh. My childhood home was a modest 3-bedroom ranch house that my parents, William and Diane Mitchell, purchased when they were first married. Dad, everyone calls him Bill, worked as a foreman at the local manufacturing plant, while Mom cleaned houses and did administrative work whenever she could find it. Money was always tight, but my parents took pride in never missing a bill payment and putting food on the table for me and my siblings. I'm the middle child between my older brother Jason, who's 32, and my younger sister Amber, who's 24. Growing up, Jason was the athletic one who Dad favored, while Amber was Mom's little princess. I was the bookworm, always with my nose buried in schoolwork. Not that my parents complained, they saw my academic success as something that reflected well on the family, even if they didn't quite understand my ambitions. "Sam's our smart one," Mom would tell relatives at family gatherings, a statement that was equal parts pride and subtle distancing. I wasn't just the smart one, I was determined to be the first Mitchell to get a college degree. High school was a balancing act. I maintained a 4.0 GPA while working weekends at the local diner and evenings at the library. When my acceptance letter from Penn State arrived with a partial scholarship, my parents organized a small celebration dinner. Dad even teared up, though he quickly blamed it on his allergies acting up. "Don't forget where you came from," he told me that night, clinking his beer bottle against my soda. "College is good, but family is forever." College was a revelation. I thrived in my marketing classes and took on extra courses each semester while juggling 3 part-time jobs. My roommate Megan would often find me studying at 3 a.m., fueled by cheap coffee and determination. We became best friends despite her wealthy background being so different from mine. "You work harder than anyone I know," she told me once. "My parents are just writing checks for my tuition, but you're earning every credit." Back home, things started to shift subtly. When I'd visit during breaks, conversations would awkwardly pause when I entered rooms. Comments about "college girl" and "too good for us now" were tossed around, disguised as jokes, but carrying stings of resentment. Jason had stayed local, working construction jobs while trying to launch a house-flipping business. Amber had bounced between community college programs, never quite settling on a direction. My graduation from Penn State was a tense affair. Mom cried happy tears and took dozens of photos, but Dad seemed uncomfortable in his ill-fitting suit, checking his watch repeatedly. Jason couldn't make it due to a work emergency, and Amber spent most of the ceremony texting. When I announced I'd accepted a position at a marketing firm in Philadelphia, the news was met with mixed reactions. "Philadelphia?" Mom had asked. "But that's almost 3 hours away. We thought you'd come back home." "Let her go," Dad had said gruffly. "If she wants the big city life, that's her choice." My first 2 years in Philadelphia were challenging but rewarding. I started in an entry-level position but quickly proved my value to the company. My tiny studio apartment wasn't much, but it was mine, the first space I'd ever had that was truly my own. I started building a life, making friends, dating occasionally, though nothing serious developed. Then came the first call for financial help. Jason's truck had broken down, and he needed $2,000 for repairs to get to job sites. I sent the money without hesitation. 3 months later, Amber needed help with an unexpected medical bill that turned out to be a cosmetic procedure. 6 months after that, my parents' furnace died in the middle of winter. Each time, I dipped into my growing savings, telling myself that's what family does. The pattern continued as my career progressed. Every few months, there would be a new crisis requiring immediate financial assistance. I began to notice that the gratitude expressed diminished with each instance, replaced by an expectation. When I hesitated before sending money for Amber's third emergency in a year, Mom called me in tears. "We never thought you'd turn your back on family," she said, her voice breaking. "After all we sacrificed for you." The guilt was effective. I sent the money but started setting boundaries. I created a separate family emergency fund with limits and began asking more questions about what the money was for. This wasn't well received. "Don't you trust us?" Dad demanded during one phone call. "We're not applying for a loan from a bank. We're asking our daughter for help." Despite these tensions, I continued advancing in my career. Last year, I was promoted to senior marketing strategist with a significant salary increase. I started seriously planning for graduate school at NYU, which would require relocating to New York and a substantial financial investment. I'd saved $47,000 specifically earmarked for tuition and living expenses during the program. When my mother called suggesting a family reunion at my parents' house, the first in over 2 years, I was initially hesitant. But part of me hoped that sharing my graduate school plans in person might help them understand my career trajectory wasn't about abandoning them, but about building a better future. "Everyone will be there," Mom promised. "Even Uncle Frank and Aunt Carol are driving in from Ohio. It would mean so much to have all my children under one roof again." How could I say no to that? I marked the date on my calendar and made arrangements to take Friday off work, giving myself a long weekend at home. I even splurged on gifts for everyone: a power tool set for Dad, gardening supplies for Mom, business books for Jason, and a designer wallet on sale for Amber. I wanted them to see that my success could benefit all of us. As I packed my car that Thursday evening, I felt optimistic. Maybe this weekend would bridge the growing gap between my life and theirs. Maybe seeing everyone together would remind us of what family truly means. I had no idea how prophetic that hope would become, though not in the way I imagined. I arrived at my parents' house Friday afternoon, pulling into the familiar gravel driveway around 4 p.m. The modest ranch house looked mostly the same, though I noticed fresh paint on the shutters and a new stone path leading to the front door. Dad's truck and Mom's sedan were parked alongside Jason's newer model pickup, which surprised me given his supposed financial struggles. Mom rushed out before I could even grab my overnight bag, enveloping me in a tight hug that smelled of her signature floral perfume. "My Sammy's home," she exclaimed, pulling back to look at me. "You look thin. Are you eating enough in that big city?" Dad appeared in the doorway, beer in hand, offering a nod and half-smile. There she is, the big-shot marketing guru. His tone was hard to read, somewhere between pride and sarcasm. Inside, the house was bustling with activity. Aunt Carol was arranging appetizers in the kitchen while Uncle Frank chatted with Jason in the living room. My cousins Taylor and Brett were helping Amber set up folding tables in the backyard. Everyone stopped to greet me with varying degrees of enthusiasm. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," Amber said, giving me a quick side hug. At 24, my sister had adopted a sophisticated style that seemed at odds with her part-time retail job. I noticed her handbag was a Michael Kors, not the knockoff kind. "Good to see you, sis," Jason said, pulling me into a bear hug. He looked good, confident in a way I hadn't seen before. "How's life treating you in Philly?" "Can't complain," I replied, setting down my gifts on the entryway table. "Work's keeping me busy, but it's rewarding." "I bet it pays well too," he said with a wink that felt slightly uncomfortable. As I moved through the house greeting everyone, I couldn't help but notice several new items that seemed out of place given my parents' financial situation. A large flat-screen TV dominated the living room wall. The worn-out couch had been replaced by a leather sectional. The kitchen sported new stainless steel appliances. "You've made some upgrades," I commented to Mom as I helped her arrange dinner plates. "Oh, well, the old stuff was falling apart," she said dismissively, not meeting my eyes. "We found good deals." Dinner that first night was a lively affair on the surface. Uncle Frank told his same old fishing stories that somehow got more elaborate each time. Aunt Carol gossiped about neighbors I barely remembered. My cousins talked about college and their summer plans. But underneath the normal family chatter, I sensed an undercurrent of tension. Whenever I mentioned anything about my work or life in Philadelphia, someone would quickly change the subject. When I tried to ask Jason about his house-flipping business, Dad interrupted to ask Amber about her latest dating prospects. When I brought up potentially moving to New York for graduate school, Mom nearly dropped the casserole dish. New York, she repeated, her voice strained. But that's even further away. It's only 2 hours from Philly, Mom, I explained. And it's one of the best business programs in the country. More school. Dad snorted, refilling his wine glass for the 3rd time. When are you going to start living in the real world? Marketing strategy is the real world, Dad, I countered, trying to keep my tone light. The graduate degree would open up even more opportunities. Sounds expensive, Jason commented. It is, I acknowledged. But I've been saving specifically for this. It's an investment in my future. An awkward silence fell over the table until Uncle Frank mercifully asked Brett about his baseball team. Later that evening, I volunteered to clean up while everyone moved to the living room for dessert. As I loaded the dishwasher, I overheard Dad and Jason talking in hushed tones on the back porch. It's almost handled, Dad was saying. Don't worry about it. The bank won't wait forever, Jason replied, sounding stressed. If we lose the inventory on this flip, we're screwed. I said I'd handle it, Dad snapped. Then, noticing me through the window, he abruptly changed the subject. Weather's supposed to be nice tomorrow. Throughout Saturday, the strange vibe continued. Mom seemed nervous, jumping whenever her phone buzzed. Dad drank steadily all day, becoming increasingly animated and then sullen as evening approached. Amber kept making little digs about my fancy apartment and important job, though she'd never visited me in Philadelphia. I tried to connect with everyone individually. I helped Mom prepare lunch, asking about her health and friends. I played cornhole with Dad and Uncle Frank in the backyard. I looked at photos of houses on Jason's phone, genuinely impressed by his renovation work. I even went for a walk with Amber, complimenting her outfit and asking about her plans. But every conversation felt superficial, as if everyone was holding something back. When I returned from the walk with Amber, I found my laptop open on the guest room bed, though I was certain I'd closed it before leaving. When I mentioned it, Amber shrugged. Maybe Mom was cleaning in here, she suggested. That night, I went to the bathroom and overheard Mom and Dad arguing in their bedroom. She doesn't need to know, Dad was saying firmly. It would just complicate things. It's not right, Bill, Mom responded, her voice wavering. We should at least talk to her first. And say what? Sorry, your brother's business is failing and we're about to lose the house? She'd just give us another lecture about financial responsibility. She works hard for her money, Bill. And we didn't? We gave up everything for those kids. She can spare some to keep a roof over our heads. I quietly returned to my room, troubled by what I'd heard but unsure what to make of it. Was my family in more serious financial trouble than they'd let on? Why hadn't they just asked me directly? Sunday brunch was the final event of the reunion weekend. Aunt Carol had prepared her famous French toast casserole, and everyone gathered around the table one last time. Dad, surprisingly sober, stood to give a toast. To family, he said, raising his orange juice. No matter what happens in life, family sticks together. Through thick and thin, good times and bad, we have each other's backs. Some of us may go far from home, he glanced at me, but blood is blood. Mitchell family forever. Mitchell family forever, everyone echoed, clinking glasses. As I packed my car that afternoon, each family member came to say goodbye. Jason gave me another big hug, holding on a beat too long. I'm really proud of you, Sam, he said with unusual sincerity. I hope you know that. Amber's goodbye was typically dramatic, with promises to visit me soon that we both knew were empty. Mom cried, making me promise to call more often. Dad's farewell was brief and gruff. Drive safe, he said, patting my shoulder awkwardly. Remember what I said about family? As I drove away, I felt conflicted. On one hand, it had been good to see everyone. On the other hand, something felt off about the entire weekend. There were too many undercurrents, too many unspoken tensions. I chalked it up to the natural distance that had grown between my life and theirs, hoping that my next visit might bridge that gap more successfully. I had no idea that by the next morning, that gap would become an unbridgeable chasm. Monday morning started like any other workday. I woke at 6 a.m. in my Philadelphia apartment, went for a quick run, showered, and made coffee. At 7:30, I sat down at my small dining table with my laptop to review my weekly budget and pay my monthly bills, a routine I'd established to keep my finances organized. I logged into my bank account, expecting to see my checking balance of around $3,200 and my savings balance of $47,063, the money I'd been meticulously saving for graduate school. Instead, I blinked at the screen in disbelief. Checking $3,178.42. Savings $0. I refreshed the page, thinking it must be a glitch. The same balances appeared. My heart began racing as I clicked on my savings account details. There it was, a transfer made on Saturday at 2:14 p.m. All $47,063 had been transferred to an external account I didn't recognize. This can't be happening, I whispered to myself, my coffee forgotten as I frantically navigated to the transaction history. The transfer had a memo line, Family Emergency Fund, Bill Mitchell. My father's name. My money. Gone. My mind flashed back to Saturday afternoon. I'd been on a walk with Amber while Mom prepared dinner. My laptop had been left in the guest room, and when I returned, it had been open. I always kept my computer locked with a password, but I realized with sickening clarity that my password manager had likely been active. And who would have known that better than my own family? With trembling hands, I called the bank's customer service line. After confirming my identity, I explained the situation to the representative. "I see the transfer here, Ms. Mitchell," she said. "It was initiated from your usual device, your MacBook Pro, and verified through your registered email address. There were no security flags raised." "But I didn't make that transfer," I insisted, my voice rising. "Someone accessed my computer without my permission." "I understand your concern," the representative responded carefully. "However, since the transfer was made from your device with your credentials, the bank considers it an authorized transaction. If you believe someone used your computer without permission, you would need to file a police report for identity theft or unauthorized access." Police report. The words hung in the air. Filing a police report would mean officially accusing my father, my family, of theft. "Is there any way to reverse the transfer?" I asked desperately. "Not without a police report and investigation, Ms. Mitchell." "I'm sorry." After hanging up, I sat motionless at my table, trying to process what was happening. Almost $50,000 gone. My graduate school fund evaporated. My future plans derailed. I called my parents' landline. No answer. I tried my father's cell phone. Straight to voicemail. I called my mother. Voicemail again. I texted all 3 family members. "Need to talk urgently. Please call me." No responses. I tried Jason next. Voicemail. Then Amber. Same result. The silence was deafening. They knew. They all knew. By now, it was 8:45 a.m., and I was supposed to be at work in 15 minutes. I called my supervisor, Lisa, my voice breaking as I explained I had a family emergency and needed to take a personal day. She was understanding, having always known me as a reliable employee who rarely missed work. I spent the next hour calling every family member repeatedly, growing increasingly frantic with each unanswered call. Finally, in desperation, I called from my work phone, which would display as an unknown number. My father answered on the second ring. "Hello." His voice was casual, as if yesterday's goodbye had been any normal family parting. "Dad, it's me," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I need to talk to you about my bank account." A long pause followed, then a heavy sigh. "I figured you'd be calling about that," he said, his tone hardening. "What about it?" "What about it?" I repeated incredulously. "Dad, all of my savings is gone. $47,000. Did you transfer that money out of my account?" "We needed it," he said flatly. "The money was just sitting there while we were about to lose everything." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto my couch, suddenly lightheaded. You stole from me? I whispered. Don't be so dramatic, Samantha, he snorted dismissively. We needed it more than you did. Family comes first. You've always been able to land on your feet. That money was for my education, for my future. My shock was giving way to anger now. How could you do this? Why didn't you just ask me? Would you have given us the entire amount? He challenged. No, you'd have lectured us about budgeting and responsibility while writing a token check. We didn't have time for that. So you just took it all? Without even talking to me. Tears were streaming down my face now. Dad, that's theft. It's family, he countered, voice rising. Mitchell family forever, remember? Or was that just a nice sentiment for you while you build your fancy life and forget where you came from? I've never forgotten, I said, my voice breaking. I've sent money every time you asked. I've never said no, not once. And we're supposed to beg our own daughter for handouts? He demanded. You think that feels good? To watch you succeed while the rest of us struggle? This way is better. Clean. Done. Done. I echoed. Dad, I need that money back. I'm supposed to start graduate school next year. Graduate school can wait, he said dismissively. Family can't. I've got to go now. Your mother and I have an appointment with the bank about our mortgage. Thanks to you, we might just save the house. The line went dead. I sat in stunned silence, phone still pressed to my ear. My own father had just admitted to stealing my life savings and showed zero remorse. In fact, he seemed to think I should be grateful for the opportunity to help the family. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a wave of nausea. Running to the bathroom, I barely made it before vomiting. Afterward, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, eyes wide with shock, face pale with betrayal. For the first time in my life, I understood that the family I thought I had, the one I'd worked so hard to support while building my own life, was an illusion. The truth was much uglier, and I had no idea what to do next. I called in sick the next day too. And the next. By Thursday, Lisa from work came by my apartment with soup and concern etched on her face. I must have looked terrible. I hadn't showered in days, had barely eaten, and had spent most of my time alternating between crying jags and stunned, hollow silence. Sam, what's going on? She asked, taking in my unwashed hair and red-rimmed eyes. This isn't like you at all. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The story poured out of me, the family reunion, the discovered theft, my father's callous justification. Lisa listened in horrified silence, occasionally squeezing my hand in support. You need to call Megan, she said firmly when I'd finished. Megan had been my best friend since college and now worked as a financial analyst in New York. And you need to eat something. I'll heat up this soup while you call her. Megan answered immediately, and her reaction was much less measured than Lisa's. They did what? She practically shouted. Sam, that's not just morally wrong, it's a crime. Identity theft, computer fraud, straight-up larceny, they could go to jail for this. They're my family, I said weakly, though the word family now felt hollow. Family doesn't steal your life savings, Megan countered. I'm coming down this weekend. Don't make any decisions until we talk in person. And for God's sake, change all your passwords immediately. After hanging up, I followed her advice, changing every password I had and enabling two-factor authentication on all accounts. While doing this, I discovered they had also accessed my email, reading messages about my graduate school applications and financial planning. The violation felt complete. Not just my money, but my privacy, my trust, my future plans, all invaded and dismantled by the people who were supposed to love me most. That evening, my phone rang again. My father's number. With trembling hands, I answered. What do you want? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hard, defensive. Don't take that tone with me, young lady, he snapped. Your mother and I have been discussing the situation, and we think you're overreacting. Overreacting? I repeated, incredulous. You stole $47,000 from me. Borrowed, he corrected. We'll pay you back eventually. But your attitude about this whole thing is disappointing. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? I interrupted, anger finally overtaking shock. I worked my way through school. I built my career on my own. I've sent money home consistently for years. And this is how you repay me. We gave you life, he shouted. We raised you. Fed you. Clothed you. That's what parents do, Samantha. And now you're acting like we committed some terrible crime because we needed help. You didn't ask for help. You stole from me. Because you've become too good for us. His voice was bitter now. With your fancy job and your big plans. You look down on us, don't think I haven't noticed. Always talking about budgeting and financial responsibility, like we're children who can't manage our own affairs. Clearly you can't, I shot back, if you're stealing from your own daughter. The line went quiet for a moment. Your mother wants to talk to you, he finally said, and I heard the phone changing hands. Sammy? My mother's voice was thick with tears. Honey, please try to understand. We were going to lose the house. The bank was going to foreclose next month. So you took my graduate school fund? Without even asking me first. We were embarrassed, she admitted. And afraid you'd say no. Jason's business investments went bad, really bad. He put the house up as collateral for a loan, and when the deal fell through, we were left holding the bag. We've been trying to keep it together for months, but we were out of options. Mom, I would have helped if you'd asked, I said, my own tears starting again. I wouldn't have given you every penny I had, but I would have helped. We needed all of it, Sammy, she said quietly. The mortgage, the second mortgage, the credit card debt, it was all coming due at once. Nearly $50,000. So you decided my future didn't matter? Family has to come first, she insisted, echoing my father's words. You've always been so independent, so capable. You'll bounce back from this. You can delay school for a few years, save up again. A few years? I repeated. Mom, do you have any idea how hard I worked for that money? How many extra projects I took on? How many weekends I gave up? I know, honey, and we're grateful. Truly. But sometimes sacrifices have to be made for family. Why am I the only one sacrificing? I asked bitterly. That's not fair, she said, her voice hardening slightly. Your father and I have sacrificed our entire lives for you kids. Jason lost everything in his business. Amber's struggling to find direction. You're the only one of our children who's truly successful. Doesn't that success come with some responsibility to the people who raised you? The guilt trip was familiar territory, but this time it didn't work. In fact, it had the opposite effect, crystallizing my anger rather than diffusing it. I'm hanging up now, Mom, I said quietly. I need some time to think. Samantha, please. I ended the call. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. Way to make Mom cry again. You've always been selfish, but this is a new low even for you. While you're building your perfect little life, the rest of us are struggling to survive. Family is supposed to help each other. Guess money matters more to you than we do. I didn't respond, but the message was like salt in an open wound. How had I become the villain in this scenario? The next day, I received a call from Uncle Frank, my father's brother. His voice was grave. Sam, I just heard what happened. I want you to know that Carol and I had no idea they were planning this. We're absolutely appalled. His words were the first validation I'd received from anyone in my family, and they unlocked something in me. I broke down crying again, unable to speak for several minutes while Uncle Frank waited patiently on the line. I don't know what to do, I finally managed. I can't believe they did this to me. I wish I could say I was completely surprised, he said with a heavy sigh. Your dad and I, we were raised by people who had some unusual ideas about family obligations. But this crosses every line. Have you considered going to the police? I can't do that, I said automatically. They're my parents. They're adults who committed a crime, he countered gently. A serious one. At the very least, you should consult a lawyer about your options. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and tried to assess the practical impact of what had happened. My graduate school plans were definitely on hold. There was no way I could afford tuition now. My emergency fund was my checking account, which would cover about 2 months of expenses if I was careful. I'd have to start saving from scratch. I called NYU and explained that I needed to defer my admission, citing a family financial emergency. The administrator was understanding, but warned me that deferral wasn't guaranteed for the following year. I might need to reapply. Another dream potentially slipping away. The weekend arrived, and with it, Megan. She took one look at me and went into crisis management mode, ordering food delivery, opening windows to air out my apartment, and practically marching me into the shower. "First, we take care of you," she insisted. "Then we figure out the next steps." Over dinner, she helped me list my options. I could file a police report and potentially get some money back through fraud protection. I could hire a lawyer and sue my family in civil court. I could try to negotiate a repayment plan. Or I could accept the loss and move on, cutting ties with my family in the process. None of those options feel right, I admitted. If I go to the police, my parents could go to jail. If I sue them, it could drag on for years. If I try to get them to repay me, I'll be tethered to people who betrayed me in the worst way. And if I just walk away, they get away with stealing my future. "There's no perfect solution here, Sam," Megan said gently. "But doing nothing is still a choice, and it's one that hurts only you." On Sunday evening, as Megan prepared to return to New York, my father called again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. His message was shorter and angrier than before. "Your Uncle Frank just called me, all high and mighty about legal consequences and betraying your daughter's trust. I guess you've been running your mouth to everyone who'll listen. Well, let me make something clear. If you take this any further, if you involve lawyers or police, you're no longer our daughter. Think carefully about whether you want to throw away your family over money." The threat landed like a slap. Not content with taking my savings, my father was now holding my place in the family hostage. But oddly, instead of cowing me, it steeled my resolve. I played the message for Megan before she left. "That," she said firmly, "is emotional blackmail from someone who knows they're wrong. Sam, these people are toxic. You deserve better." As the new week began, I returned to work, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while my personal life imploded. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family trauma, following a recommendation from Lisa. I also set up a meeting with a lawyer friend who had offered a free consultation. On Tuesday, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to hear what she had to say. I spoke with Amber. She began without preamble. "There's something you should know. Some of the money, about $8,000, went to pay off her credit card debt. She's been struggling with shopping addiction. We didn't want to worry you with it." I closed my eyes, absorbing this new betrayal. "So not only did you take my money without asking, but you lied about what it was for?" "Not entirely," she said defensively. "Most of it did go to save the house. But Amber's debt was part of the problem. She's been seeing a counselor for it." "With my money," I said flatly. "Sam, please. I have to go, Mom. I'm at work." That evening, I received an unexpected text from Jason. "Can we talk? Just us." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between Philadelphia and my hometown that weekend. When Saturday came, I arrived early, nervous, and unsure what to expect. Jason showed up looking haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I've been trying to figure out what to say to you all week. How about starting with the truth?" I suggested, not unkindly. "What really happened, Jason?" He took a deep breath and launched into the story. His house-flipping business had been struggling for years, not just recently as I'd been led to believe. He'd taken increasingly risky investments, leveraging one property to buy another, counting on quick turnarounds and rising markets. When the local economy stalled, he found himself overextended. "I convinced Dad to help by putting up the house as collateral for a business loan," he admitted, staring into his coffee. "I promised I'd double their money in 6 months. Instead, I lost everything. Why didn't you tell me? I could have advised you at least." "Pride," he said simply. "You were doing so well, and I was failing. It was easier to resent you than ask for your help. So taking my money was the solution?" "That wasn't my idea," he said quickly. "I swear, Sam. Dad called me the night before the reunion and said he had a plan to fix everything. I didn't know what he meant until after you left on Sunday, when he told me what he'd done. I was shocked. But you didn't call to warn me, I pointed out. You didn't try to stop it? No, he admitted, shoulders slumping further. By the time I found out, it was already done. And, honestly, there was a part of me that was relieved. The bank was going to take Mom and Dad's house because of my mistakes. At least this way, they're safe. At my expense. Yes, he acknowledged, finally meeting my eyes. At your expense. And I'm sorry, Sam. Truly sorry. That's why I wanted to meet. I can't give you all the money back right away, but I've worked out a plan. I can pay you $500 a month starting now. It'll take years, but eventually, I'll repay my share. I was touched by the gesture, even as I recognized its inadequacy. At $500 a month, it would take nearly 8 years to repay even just his portion of what was taken. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. Are they planning to repay their share too? Jason's expression told me everything I needed to know. Dad says they're too old to take on debt, he said uncomfortably. That parents shouldn't have to pay back their children. Mom feels guilty, but she follows Dad's lead. And Amber. Amber thinks you're being dramatic about the whole thing. She says you can just get another high-paying job and make it back quickly. The casual dismissal of my loss of years of disciplined saving and careful planning was infuriating. But I appreciated Jason's honesty and his willingness to at least try to make amends. I'll accept your payments, I told him. But this isn't just about money, Jason. It's about trust. About respect. Our family has some serious issues to work through. I know, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I think what they did was wrong. Really wrong. I wish I had the courage to stand up to Dad about it. As we parted ways, I felt marginally better about my relationship with Jason, but the larger family situation remained a gaping wound. I drove back to Philadelphia with slightly more clarity, but no less pain. That night, I received a call from Aunt Carol, who had apparently been keeping tabs on the situation through Uncle Frank and Jason. Your cousin Taylor wanted me to tell you something, she said after expressing her own support. She went through something similar with her ex-husband before the divorce. He cleaned out their joint accounts right before she filed. She said to tell you that the hardest part was accepting that someone she loved could betray her so completely, but that eventually, she built a better life without him. She thinks you can do the same. The comparison to a divorce was apartment. I was grieving the loss of the family I thought I had, the parents I believed would always have my back, the siblings I assumed would support me through thick and thin. That family had never really existed, at least not in the way I'd imagined. As the reality of my situation settled in, I found myself facing the hardest question of all. What kind of relationship, if any, did I want with the people who had betrayed me so profoundly? 1 week after discovering the theft, I was sitting in my boss Lisa's office for our scheduled one-on-one meeting. I'd tried to maintain my normal work performance, but it was obvious I was struggling. My normally meticulous reports had errors. I'd missed deadlines. During a client call, I'd completely blanked on information I should have known by heart. Sam, Lisa said gently, closing the door behind us, I've been patient because I know you're going through something personal. But I need to understand if this is temporary or if we need to make adjustments to your workload. The kindness in her voice nearly undid me. I'd been holding myself together with sheer willpower, compartmentalizing my personal crisis during work hours. But the walls between those compartments were crumbling. My family stole my entire savings, I blurted out. Every penny I had set aside for graduate school. My own parents. They accessed my accounts during a family visit and transferred it all out. Lisa's eyes widened. Sam, that's criminal. Have you gone to the police? I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice breaking. They're my family. But they betrayed me in the worst way, and they don't even seem to think they did anything wrong. My father actually threatened to disown me if I take legal action. That's textbook manipulation, Lisa said firmly. Look, I'm not a therapist or a lawyer, but I do know that what they did was wrong on every level. Have you spoken to anyone professional about this? I nodded. I have an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow. And I started seeing a therapist this week. Good, she said. That's really good, Sam. As for work, take the rest of the week off. Paid personal leave. Get the legal and emotional support you need, and we'll figure out the work stuff when you come back. Your job isn't going anywhere. Her support was like a lifeline in a stormy sea. I'd been so afraid of failing professionally on top of everything else that I'd been pushing myself beyond reasonable limits. The permission to step back, even temporarily, was an immense relief. The next day, I met with Alexis, a lawyer friend of Megan's who specialized in financial crimes. She listened intently as I explained the situation, occasionally taking notes, but mostly just letting me talk. Before we discuss legal options, she said when I'd finished, I want to be clear about something. What your family did constitutes several serious crimes: identity theft, unauthorized computer access, and grand larceny, among others. If you were to file a police report, they could face criminal charges that might result in jail time, especially for your father as the primary actor. I nodded, stomach churning at the thought. That said, she continued, there are other approaches. A formal demand letter from my office might be enough to scare them into setting up a repayment plan. We could file a civil suit seeking damages without involving criminal charges. Or you could attempt to negotiate directly with them, though given what you've told me, I don't recommend that route. What would you do? I asked. She considered carefully before answering. If it were my money, I'd send a formal demand letter with a deadline for response, making it clear that failure to establish a repayment plan would result in both civil and criminal actions. But Sam, this isn't just about money for you. It's about family. That complicates things emotionally in ways I can't fully address as your lawyer. I left her office with a draft demand letter in hand and a promise to think carefully before deciding how to proceed. The letter laid out the facts in stark, legal language: unauthorized access, fraudulent transfer, financial damages, and demanded full repayment within 30 days or face legal consequences. Reading it in the privacy of my apartment that evening, I felt sick. The clinical description of what my family had done made it impossible to rationalize or minimize. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a well-intentioned mistake. It was a calculated theft from someone they were supposed to love and protect. With shaking hands, I typed out an email to my entire family, mother, father, Jason, and Amber, with the subject line regarding the $47,063 taken from my account. I've consulted with a lawyer about the unauthorized transfer of funds from my savings account, I wrote. Attached is a letter outlining the legal perspective on what occurred and the potential consequences. I'm giving you one chance to make this right before I'm forced to take more formal action. I need a response with a concrete repayment plan within 7 days. I attached the letter, took a deep breath, and hit send before I could lose my nerve. The response was immediate and explosive. My father called within minutes, his voice shaking with rage. A lawyer? You're threatening your own family with lawyers now, he shouted. After everything we've done for you? This is how you repay us. You stole my life savings, Dad, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. What did you expect me to do? I expected you to understand that family takes care of family. That money saved our home, your childhood home. You didn't give me a choice, I countered. You didn't even ask me. Because you would have said no. You don't know that, I said quietly. But even if I had, that was my right. It was my money, earned through my work. So that's it? You'd let your parents become homeless over money? What kind of daughter does that make you? The guilt trip that had worked so effectively throughout my life suddenly seemed transparent and manipulative. What kind of parents steal from their child? I asked simply. He had no answer for that, just more anger. If you go through with this, if you really sick lawyers and police on your own blood, then you're no daughter of mine. You understand that? You'll be dead to us. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face, but feeling strangely calm. The threat that should have devastated me instead clarified everything. My father was showing me exactly who he was: someone who would steal, lie, manipulate, and ultimately discard me rather than take responsibility for his actions. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Please call me privately. I want to discuss this without your father. Warily, I called her. Sammy, she began, her voice pleading, you have to understand what you're doing here. Your father is proud, too proud sometimes. If you push this, he'll never forgive you. Is that really what you want? To destroy our family over money? I'm not the one who destroyed anything, Mom, I said softly. You and Dad did that when you stole from me. We were desperate, she insisted. The bank was going to foreclose. Do you want us to lose the house? To live on the street? There were other options, I pointed out. You could have told me the truth. You could have asked for help. You could have downsized to a smaller place. You could have declared bankruptcy. Instead, you chose to steal from your own daughter. It sounds so harsh when you put it that way, she said, sniffling. It was harsh, Mom. What you did was incredibly hurtful. Not just taking the money, but the violation of trust. How am I ever supposed to trust any of you again? She had no answer for that, just more tears and pleas to reconsider. I ended the call feeling emotionally drained but more resolved than ever. The family group chat exploded that evening. Amber led the charge, painting me as a heartless monster who cared more about money than family. Jason was notably silent. Extended family members weighed in, some defending my parents. They raised you. They gave you everything. Others cautiously supporting me, taking without asking was wrong, but surely there's a solution that doesn't involve lawyers. The next morning, I awoke to an email from my father. The subject line read simply, "Your ultimatum. Samantha," it began formally, "Your mother and I have discussed your threatening letter. We are deeply disappointed in your willingness to turn against your own family in this way. The money was used to save our home and help your siblings through difficult times, all family priorities that you seem to have forgotten in your pursuit of individual success. However, to avoid the scandal and expense of legal proceedings, we are willing to acknowledge a debt of $15,000, payable in monthly installments of $100 beginning next year. This represents our fair assessment of your contribution to family needs, excluding what we have invested in raising you to adulthood. Should this offer be unacceptable, we will have no choice but to sever family ties completely and contest any legal claims on the grounds that the money was a gift freely given to parents in need. Consider your response carefully. William Mitchell." The insulting offer to repay less than a third of what they took, starting a year from now, at a rate that would take over 12 years to complete, made me laugh bitterly. It was so transparently inadequate that it reinforced my growing conviction that my parents had no intention of making this right. I forwarded the email to Alexis without comment. She called me within the hour. "This is actually helpful," she said. "It's a written admission that they took the money, which undermines any future claim that it was a gift. Their counterproposal is ridiculous, of course, but it gives us leverage." "What's the next step?" I asked. "I can send a formal response rejecting their offer and reiterating our demands," she suggested. "Or you can take a stronger stance immediately by filing the police report, which would trigger an investigation." I hesitated, still unable to imagine my parents being interrogated by police or appearing in court. "Let's try the formal response first," I decided. Give them one more chance to be reasonable. Later that afternoon, as I was reviewing work documents sent by Lisa, my phone rang. It was Jason. "Dad's going ballistic over the lawyer letter," he said without preamble. "He's talking about disowning you, writing you out of the will, the works." "I don't care about the will," I said truthfully. "I care about the money that was stolen from me." "I know," he sighed. "Look, I've been thinking about this all week. I want to make things right, at least for my part. I can increase my payments to $700 a month. It's tight, but I can manage it." I was touched by his effort, but also aware that, even at that rate, just his portion would take years to repay. "I appreciate that, Jason. I really do. But what about Mom and Dad? And Amber?" "Amber's in denial," he admitted. "She doesn't think she did anything wrong by benefiting from the money. As for Mom and Dad," he trailed off. "Dad's position is that parents don't owe children money. It's always the other way around. Mom feels guilty, but won't go against him." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table feeling the full weight of the situation. The family I thought I had, the one I'd sacrificed for, sent money to, maintained relationships with despite growing differences, was revealing itself to be something else entirely. A family that would take without asking, blame me for the theft, and then threaten to disown me for seeking justice. That evening, I experienced a full-blown panic attack, my first ever. It started with a tightness in my chest that I mistook for heartburn. Then came rapid breathing, dizziness, and a terrifying sensation that I was dying. I called Megan in a panic, and she talked me through it, instructing me to breathe slowly and focus on my immediate surroundings. "You're having an anxiety attack," she said soothingly. "It feels awful, but it's not dangerous. You're safe, Sam. Just keep breathing with me." After the attack subsided, leaving me exhausted and shaken, Megan insisted on staying on the phone. "I think you need to see your therapist again ASAP," she said. "This situation is taking a serious toll on your health." I managed to get an emergency appointment the following day. Dr. Rivera listened attentively as I described the escalating conflict and my physical symptoms. "What you're experiencing is a normal response to severe betrayal trauma," she explained. "The people you trusted most violated that trust in a profound way. Your body and mind are processing that as a threat to your survival, which in many ways, it is financially and emotionally. How do I make it stop?" I asked desperately. "I feel like I'm falling apart." "First, we need to establish safety," she said. "Financial safety, emotional safety, physical safety. Then we can work on processing the trauma. But safety comes first." "I don't even know what safety looks like anymore," I admitted. "It looks like having clear boundaries with consequences," she replied. "It looks like making decisions based on your well-being, not others' expectations. And sometimes, it looks like distance from people who have shown they can't be trusted." Her words resonated deeply. For too long, I defined family loyalty as sacrificing my own needs for others. But true loyalty should be reciprocal, a mutual commitment to each other's well-being. What my family was demanding wasn't loyalty, it was submission. The next day, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. Aunt Carol stood in my hallway, looking worried but determined. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by," she said. "Frank and I were visiting our daughter in New Jersey, and I wanted to see you in person." Over coffee at my small dining table, she shared something that shifted my entire understanding of the situation. "This isn't the first time your father has done something like this," she revealed quietly. "Years ago, before you were born, he borrowed, without asking, your grandfather's retirement savings. Nearly wiped him out. There was a huge family rift. Your grandfather almost pressed charges, but your grandmother couldn't bear the shame of it." I stared at her, stunned. "I never knew that. No one talks about it anymore," she continued. "Your father eventually paid some of it back, but your grandparents had to work well into their 70s because of what he did. I thought that experience had taught him a lesson, but apparently not." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you need to know you're not crazy for feeling violated," she said firmly. "And because history is repeating itself. Your father has a pattern of taking what isn't his when he feels entitled to it, then using family loyalty to shield himself from consequences." Her validation was like oxygen to someone who'd been drowning. For the first time since the theft, I felt absolutely certain that I wasn't overreacting or being unreasonable. The problem wasn't my response to the theft, it was the theft itself, and the family dynamics that had enabled it. As Aunt Carol was leaving, she hugged me tightly. "Whatever you decide to do, Frank and I support you. Family should lift each other up, not tear each other down." With that perspective and support, I found the clarity I'd been searching for. That evening, I sat down at my computer and composed a long email to my entire family. After much reflection, I wrote, "I've come to a decision about how to proceed. What happened was not a misunderstanding or a one-time mistake. It was a deliberate act of theft that violated my trust in profound ways. More disturbing than the act itself has been the response, justifications, minimizations, and threats rather than genuine remorse or efforts to make amends. I am offering one final opportunity to resolve this without legal intervention. I require 1. A formal, written acknowledgement of the full amount taken without permission, $47,063. 2. A structured repayment plan that returns the entire amount within 3 years, with reasonable interest. 3. A sincere apology that demonstrates understanding of the harm caused. If these terms are not agreed to within 7 days, I will proceed with both civil action to recover the funds and a criminal complaint for identity theft and unauthorized access to my accounts. This is not a threat, it is simply the consequence of the choices made. I take no pleasure in this. I wish things were different. But I cannot and will not allow myself to be stolen from and then vilified for seeking justice, even by family. Samantha. I sent the email and then, for the first time in days, slept soundly through the night. The morning after sending my ultimatum email, I woke up feeling different. The crushing anxiety that had plagued me for weeks had receded, replaced by a calm resolve. I had drawn my line in the sand. Now I needed to prepare for whatever came next. My first action was to schedule a follow-up appointment with Alexis, the lawyer. I wanted to be ready to file both civil and criminal complaints if my family rejected my terms. Walking into her office, I felt none of the hesitation that had characterized our first meeting. I've given them one final chance to make this right, I explained, showing her my email. But I need to be prepared if, when, they refuse. Alexis nodded approvingly. This is a clear, reasonable final offer. If they don't accept it, we'll have demonstrated that you attempted to resolve this amicably before taking legal action. That will reflect well on you if this goes to court. We spent the next hour going through the process of filing a police report for identity theft and unauthorized computer access. She explained that once I filed, a detective would be assigned to the case. The detective will likely want to interview you and review evidence like bank statements and email exchanges, she said. They may also seek to interview your family members. If they find sufficient evidence, which seems likely based on what you've shared, they'll refer the case to the district attorney, who will decide whether to pursue criminal charges. The thought of my parents being interrogated by police still made me queasy, but I reminded myself that this was the consequence of their actions, not mine. What are the potential outcomes if criminal charges are filed? I asked. It varies widely, she explained. For first-time offenders, especially in family cases, prosecutors sometimes offer plea deals that include restitution without jail time. But ultimately, that's not in your control. The state decides how to prosecute criminal cases once they're reported. Next, we discuss the civil lawsuit track, which would run parallel to any criminal proceedings. The civil case is about recovering your money, Alexis clarified. We'd sue for the full amount plus interest, legal fees, and potentially punitive damages. Civil cases can move slowly, but the standard of proof is lower than in criminal cases. Based on the evidence you have, including your father's emails acknowledging the taking, I believe we have a strong case. Before I left, Alexis gave me a folder containing all the forms I would need to file a police report, along with a detailed timeline of events and evidence to present to investigators. Whatever you decide, she said as we wrapped up, remember that seeking justice for a wrong committed against you is not the same as attacking your family. They committed the harmful act. You're simply responding to protect yourself. Her words echoed what Dr. Rivera had told me about establishing safety. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protection and justice. That afternoon, I took another critical step in securing my financial future. I met with Naomi, a financial advisor recommended by Lisa, to assess the damage and develop a recovery plan. The loss is substantial, Naomi acknowledged after reviewing my finances, but not insurmountable. You're young, employed in a growing field, and you have no debt. Those are significant advantages. Together, we created a revised financial plan. I would need to postpone full-time graduate school, but could potentially start a part-time program in the spring. By making some lifestyle adjustments, moving to a less expensive apartment, cutting back on non-essential expenses, I could rebuild an emergency fund within 6 months and start saving for education again. Consider this a setback, not a roadblock, Naomi advised. Your long-term financial goals are still achievable, just on an adjusted timeline. The practical plan provided a sense of control that had been missing since the theft. I might have lost my savings, but I hadn't lost my earning potential or my determination. Returning home that evening, I found myself mentally preparing for whatever would come next. Would my family accept my terms, or would I need to follow through with legal action? Part of me hoped for the former, but a growing part expected the latter. Sure enough, my phone rang around 8 p.m. My father's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. I got your email, he said without preamble, his voice cold. So that's how it's going to be? You're really willing to drag your own family through the mud? To see your parents in handcuffs? To create a scandal that will follow all of us for years? I'm willing to seek justice for a serious crime committed against me, I replied evenly. The terms I outlined are more than fair. Fair, he scoffed. You want us to pay back every penny with interest in 3 years? That's impossible, and you know it. Jason has already committed to significant monthly payments, I pointed out. If everyone contributes, it's entirely possible. I'm 60 years old, Samantha, he exploded. I don't have years of earning ahead of me like you do. Your mother and I are trying to retire, not take on massive debt. You should have thought of that before stealing my money, I said quietly. Don't you dare use that word, he hissed. I'm your father. You wouldn't even exist without me. I changed your diapers, put food on your table, clothed you, educated you. That was your job as a parent, I interrupted. It doesn't give you the right to steal from me as an adult. You ungrateful, he cut himself off, breathing heavily. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play. Go ahead, file your reports, hire your fancy lawyers. But understand this. The moment you do, you are no longer our daughter. Your mother will be devastated, but I won't have a thief accuser in my family. The irony of him calling me a thief accuser when he was the actual thief might have been funny if it weren't so tragic. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. My terms stand. 7 days. I ended the call and immediately blocked his number. Then I did the same for my mother and Amber. I kept Jason's line open, as he was the only one making genuine efforts to make amends. The next morning, I received an email from my mother, subject line, "Please reconsider." Sammy, she wrote, I'm begging you not to do this. Your father is furious, but he's also scared. We both are. We never meant to hurt you, we were just trying to save our home. I know it was wrong to take the money without asking. I feel terrible about it every day. But please don't destroy our family over this. No amount of money is worth losing each other forever. Can't we find another way? With love always, Mom. The emotional appeal tugged at my heart, but I noticed something telling. Even in her plea, there was no offer to return the money, no proposed solution, just an appeal to family sentiment to make the problem go away. I filed the email without responding. That same day, I received a surprising message from Uncle Frank. Sam, I spoke with your father last night. It didn't go well. He's digging in his heels. Carol and I have discussed it, and we want to help. We can contribute $10,000 toward what they owe you. It's not everything, but it's a start. Let us know if you're willing to accept it. I was deeply touched by their offer, but reluctant to let my parents off the hook by having others pay their debt. After consulting with Dr. Rivera, I called Uncle Frank. I appreciate your offer more than I can say, I told him. But this isn't your responsibility. Mom and Dad need to make this right themselves. I understand, he said. But the offer stands if you change your mind. And Sam? I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It takes courage. As the week progressed, I threw myself into rebuilding. I researched smaller apartments in less trendy neighborhoods, calculated potential savings from cutting back on luxuries, and explored part-time graduate programs that would allow me to work while studying. I also changed all my passwords again, froze my credit with all 3 major bureaus, and set up fraud alerts on all my accounts. On day 5 after my ultimatum, I received a text from Jason. Dad met with a lawyer. It didn't go well for him. The lawyer apparently told him he doesn't have a leg to stand on legally. He's furious, but might be coming around. I'm working on him. Don't give up yet. The message gave me a glimmer of hope, though I was careful not to expect too much. My father's pride had backed him into a corner. Admitting wrongdoing and accepting my terms would require him to swallow that pride, something I'd rarely seen him do. On day 6, an email arrived from my mother's account, but the formal tone made it clear my father had dictated it. Samantha, after consulting with legal counsel, we are prepared to acknowledge a debt in the amount of $40,000, repayable over 5 years at 2% interest. Jason will contribute as he has offered, and your mother and I will make monthly payments according to our ability. This offer is contingent upon your agreement not to pursue any legal action, criminal or civil, related to this matter. Please respond with your acceptance or rejection of these terms. William and Diane Mitchell. It wasn't everything I'd asked for, but it was close enough to be a reasonable compromise. The total was still $7,063 short of what they'd taken, and the time frame was longer than I demanded, but the interest would partially offset both issues. Most importantly, it represented an acknowledgement of the debt and a commitment to repayment. After consulting with Alexis, I crafted a response accepting their offer with several conditions. The agreement would be formally documented by my lawyer. Any missed payments would result in the full remaining balance becoming immediately due, and I would require a signed confession of the theft to hold in escrow, to be used only if they defaulted on the agreement. These terms are non-negotiable, I concluded. I expect your signed agreement within 48 hours. The response came the next morning. We accept your conditions. Have your lawyer draw up the paperwork. It wasn't the complete victory I might have hoped for, nor the full validation I deserved, but it was a resolution I could live with. The money would eventually be returned, and I could begin rebuilding my life without the constant stress of legal battles with my own family. More importantly, I had stood my ground. I had refused to be gaslit, manipulated, or bullied into accepting the unacceptable. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had prioritized my own well-being over my family's demands and expectations. The formal agreement was signed the following week in Alexis's office. My parents arrived looking grim but resigned. Jason came separately, clearly uncomfortable but determined to do his part. Amber refused to attend, sending a text that simply read, "Hope you're happy with yourself." The meeting was brief and businesslike. My father barely looked at me as he signed the documents, while my mother kept wiping away tears. Jason gave my shoulder a supportive squeeze as we left. "I'm sorry it came to this," he said quietly. "But I'm going to make sure I keep up my end of the deal." "I know you will," I replied. "And Jason? Thank you for being honest with me. It means more than you know." As I walked back to my car, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The family I had known was irrevocably changed. The unconditional trust was gone, replaced by legal documents and payment schedules. But in its place was something perhaps more valuable, the knowledge that I could protect myself, that I deserved to be treated with respect, and that I was strong enough to demand it. The road ahead would not be easy. Rebuilding my savings would take time. Redefining my relationships with my family, especially my parents, would be complicated and painful. But for the first time since discovering the theft, I felt genuinely hopeful about my future. That evening, I called Megan to share the news. "So they caved," she said, sounding satisfied. "I knew they would once they realized you were serious." "They didn't exactly cave," I corrected her. "We compromised. But yes, they agreed to repay most of it." "And how do you feel about that?" I considered the question carefully. "Relieved mostly, but also sad. Things will never be the same between us. There will always be this breach." "Maybe that's not entirely bad," Megan suggested gently. "The old relationship had some pretty unhealthy patterns. Maybe the new one can be more honest, more balanced." Maybe, I agreed, though I wasn't entirely convinced. One thing's for sure, I'll never let anyone make me feel guilty for protecting myself again. That, Megan said firmly, is worth more than any amount of money. As I prepared for bed that night, I found myself thinking about the long journey ahead, not just the financial recovery, but the emotional one. I had lost my savings, but I had gained something perhaps more valuable, the unshakable knowledge that I was strong enough to face even the most painful betrayals and emerge intact. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of finding a new apartment, researching part-time graduate programs, and adjusting my budget. I would continue therapy to process the complex emotions surrounding my family's betrayal. I would rebuild, one careful step at a time. And I would never again mistake exploitation for love or sacrifice for family duty. Those were lessons worth every penny I had lost. 6 months after the legal agreement was signed, I stood in my new apartment, unpacking the last of my boxes. The space was smaller than my previous place, a one-bedroom in a less trendy neighborhood with no dishwasher and radiator heat, but the rent was $400 less per month, and that difference was going directly into my rebuilding fund. My financial recovery was proceeding slowly but steadily. Every month, like clockwork, Jason transferred $700 to my account. My parents' payments had started as agreed, though they came without notes or messages, just electronic transfers from an account I didn't recognize, probably set up specifically for this purpose. The initial months had been the hardest. Moving had been expensive despite my efforts to economize. Starting over in a new place always involves unexpected costs, security deposits, moving trucks, various fees. But by cutting back on luxuries and picking up freelance marketing projects on weekends, I'd managed to build a modest emergency fund of $3,000. My professional life had stabilized as well. After my week of personal leave, I'd returned to work with renewed focus. Lisa had been understanding and supportive, even helping me adjust my schedule when I started applying to part-time graduate programs. That had been a bright spot in an otherwise difficult period. NYU had approved my request to switch from the full-time to the part-time MBA program, allowing me to continue working while studying. It would take longer to complete, 3 years instead of 2, but I would graduate with less debt and valuable work experience. My acceptance letter had arrived just last week, and I'd pinned it to my refrigerator as a daily reminder that setbacks didn't have to derail dreams, they just required adaptation. The emotional healing had been more complicated than the financial or professional adjustments. Dr. Rivera had helped me process the complex grief of family betrayal, the loss not just of money, but of the relationships and trust one had taken for granted. What you're experiencing is ambiguous loss, she had explained during one particularly difficult session. Your family is still physically present in the world, but the relationship you thought you had with them is gone. That's a genuine loss that needs to be mourned. And mourn I had. There were days when the sadness felt overwhelming, when I questioned whether I'd done the right thing by pushing for repayment instead of accepting the loss to preserve family harmony. But those doubts had gradually receded as I built a new support network and established healthier boundaries. My relationship with my immediate family had fractured along predictable lines. Amber had blocked me on social media and refused all contact. My mother sent occasional texts, usually on holidays or birthdays. Brief and careful, avoiding any mention of the conflict or the ongoing repayments. My father hadn't contacted me directly since the signing of the agreement, communicating only through my mother or Jason when absolutely necessary. Jason had become an unexpected ally. Our relationship, while still complicated, had evolved into something more honest and respectful than before. He called weekly, not just to update me on the family situation, but to genuinely check in on my well-being. He'd even visited Philadelphia twice, helping me move into my new apartment and later bringing dinner to celebrate my acceptance to the part-time MBA program. Dad asks about you sometimes, he'd revealed during his last visit. He'd never admit it, but I think he misses you. Has he ever expressed any regret? I'd asked, trying to keep the hope from my voice. Jason had shaken his head sadly. Not in so many words. You know how he is. But he keeps your graduation photo on his nightstand. That's something, I guess. It was something, but not enough. Not yet, anyway. Thanksgiving had presented my first major holiday decision, whether to attempt a family gathering or create new traditions. After much deliberation and several therapy sessions, I'd opted for the latter, accepting an invitation to join Megan's family in New York. You're part of our chosen family now, Megan's mother had declared, pulling me into a warm hug when I arrived at their brownstone. And we're so happy to have you. That day had been surprisingly healing, filled with genuine laughter, delicious food, and none of the undercurrents of resentment or manipulation that had characterized family gatherings in the past. I'd returned to Philadelphia feeling lighter, with the realization that family could be defined by actions and choices, not just blood. Uncle Frank and Aunt Carol had remained steadfast in their support, calling regularly and even visiting once to take me to dinner. They provided updates on the extended family without pressure or judgment, allowing me to maintain connections that might otherwise have been severed in the fallout. Through it all, I'd continued to grow personally and professionally. The crisis had forced me to examine my values, boundaries, and resilience in ways that nothing else could have. I discovered an inner strength I hadn't known I possessed, the ability to stand firm in the face of emotional manipulation, to prioritize my own well-being without debilitating guilt, and to rebuild after significant loss. Just last week, I'd received an acceptance letter from NYU's part-time MBA program, along with a small scholarship that would help offset the costs. I'd start in January, taking evening classes twice a week while continuing my full-time job. It wasn't the path I'd originally planned, but it was a path forward nonetheless. My savings account, once emptied by betrayal, now contained nearly $12,000. A combination of aggressive saving, the monthly repayments, and a performance bonus from work. It wasn't $47,000, but it was progress, tangible evidence that recovery was possible. Perhaps the most significant change had been internal, a shift in how I defined family and obligation. Dr. Rivera had helped me see that true love didn't demand self-sacrifice or submission. It supported growth and respected boundaries. The people who had shown up for me during this crisis, Megan, Lisa, Uncle Frank, and Aunt Carol, even Jason in his way, had demonstrated what genuine care looked like, often without blood ties or decades of history. Family isn't just who raised you, Dr. Rivera had observed during a recent session. It's who shows up for you, who respects you, who wants the best for you without conditions. That insight had been profoundly liberating. It had allowed me to begin the long process of forgiving, not for my parents' sake, but for my own. Forgiveness didn't mean pretending the theft hadn't happened or that the betrayal hadn't cut deeply. It meant acknowledging the reality of what had occurred while refusing to let it define my future or consume my present. One evening in early December, as I was preparing for my final work presentation of the year, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Samantha? It's your mother." Her voice sounded different, hesitant, but somehow steadier than in our previous interactions. "Hi, Mom," I replied cautiously. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," she assured me. "I'm calling from a friend's phone because, well, I wanted to talk to you privately. About what happened." I sat down on my couch, heart pounding. "I'm listening." "I've been doing some thinking," she began slowly. "A lot of thinking, actually. And I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. What we did to you was wrong. Not just taking the money, but how we handled everything afterward." The apology I'd waited months to hear caught me off guard. I remained silent, unsure how to respond. "I can't change your father's mind," she continued, "and I can't speak for him. But I can speak for myself. I betrayed your trust, and I've been making excuses instead of taking responsibility. I'm not asking for forgiveness, at least not yet. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you did what you did. And you were right to do it." Tears filled my eyes as I absorbed her words. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was an important first step. "Thank you for saying that, Mom," I said finally. "It means a lot to hear." "I miss you," she admitted. "The house feels empty without your visits. Would you be open to meeting for coffee sometime? Just the two of us." I considered the request carefully. My instinct was caution, but Dr. Rivera had encouraged me to remain open to genuine attempts at reconciliation while maintaining healthy boundaries. "I think I'd like that," I said. "Maybe after the holidays, when things are less hectic?" "I'd like that too," she said, the relief evident in her voice. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The wound was still there, still tender in places, but it was healing. The future remained uncertain. I had no illusions that one conversation would restore what had been broken, but for the first time, I could envision a path toward a new kind of relationship with my family. Not based on blind trust or unquestioning loyalty, but on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and earned trust. The lessons had been painful but valuable. That love should never be used as a weapon or a shield. That setting boundaries wasn't selfish but necessary. That forgiveness was a process, not an event. That sometimes the healthiest thing to do is to step back, even from family. That resilience came not from avoiding pain, but from moving through it. And perhaps most importantly, that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. As I prepared for bed that night, I paused at my small desk to look at a new framed quote I'd recently purchased. Family is not defined by blood, but by commitment and love. 6 months ago, those words would have seemed like a betrayal of everything I'd been taught. Now, they felt like wisdom, hard-won and precious. I had lost much in the past half-year: money, security, innocence, and certain family bonds. But I had gained something invaluable: the knowledge that no matter what happened, I could trust myself to protect what mattered, to rebuild what was broken, and to recognize genuine love when it was offered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: final preparations for the holidays, year-end work deadlines, planning for the start of graduate classes in January. But I would face them with a confidence born of survival, with boundaries forged in crisis, and with a growing circle of people who demonstrated love through actions, not just words. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time since that terrible Monday morning when I discovered my empty savings account, I felt truly hopeful about the chapters yet to be written. What would you do if someone you trusted completely betrayed you like this? Would you have the courage to stand up for yourself, even if it meant risking important relationships? Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? I'd love to hear your stories and perspectives in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating difficult family dynamics and finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately lead to our greatest healing.